The host thought he had backed Usha Vance into a corner, but her response left him scrambling in front of millions. The cameras rolled, the lights glared, and the tension in the studio was palpable. A well-known liberal commentator, the host, sat upright, a smirk creeping onto his face as he shuffled his notes. This was his routine. Lure the guest in, make them comfortable, then hit them with a question designed to put them on the defensive. But Usha Vance was no ordinary guest. Dressed in a simple yet elegant navy blazer, she exuded quiet confidence, the kind that commanded attention. A Yale-educated attorney with a composed intelligence, she had faced far tougher situations than a live TV debate. Yet tonight was different. The conversation had followed a predictable path: politics, her legal career, and, of course, her husband, Senator J.D. Vance. Then the host leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk, tilting his head slightly. His tone was casual, but the sharpness in his voice was unmistakable. "Do you ever regret marrying J.D. Vance?" The question hit like a brick, shifting the air in the room. This wasn't curiosity. It was a trap, a calculated move to either bait her into an incriminating response or put her on the defensive. The uncomfortable position of having to defend her own marriage hung in the air. A few audience members gasped softly, while others leaned forward, sensing a sharp turn in the conversation. The studio crew recognized the moment, even the camera. Operators instinctively adjusted their focus, ready to capture whatever came next. The host, a man who had built his career on catching guests off guard, barely concealed his satisfaction. He had framed the question perfectly, innocent enough to appear casual but laced with just enough venom to provoke a reaction. He had seen other politicians' spouses stumble under similar pressure: a nervous laugh, a hesitant pause, an awkward misstep. Any of these would have served his purpose. But Usha didn't stumble. She didn't fumble. And she certainly didn't laugh awkwardly. Instead, she let the question linger, allowing silence to stretch between them, thick with unspoken tension. The audience shifted in their seats, unsettled. The host watched her intently, waiting for any sign that he had thrown her off balance. But all he got was a slow, deliberate smile. A beat passed, then another. His smirk faltered just slightly, but he wasn't prepared for what came next. He leaned back, his confidence now tinged with something else: curiosity, perhaps even the first flickers of doubt. He had expected her to rush into an answer, something he could dissect and exploit. But she simply sat there, composed, calm, and utterly unshaken. The silence only grew heavier. The audience held their breath, sensing the weight of the moment. Live television had a way of making even the smallest pause feel endless. And right now, everyone in the studio knew something was about to shift. Finally, Usha took a slow, measured breath and met the host's gaze, not with anger or discomfort, but with something far more unsettling to him: amusement. "Regret?" she repeated, as if he had just asked whether she regretted having breakfast that morning. Her voice was steady, without a hint of hesitation. The host blinked, his fingers twitching slightly on the desk. He had expected her to stumble, to deflect, maybe even laugh nervously. Instead, she took her time, exuding a quiet confidence that made it clear she was in control. Crossing one leg over the other, she adjusted in her chair before speaking again. "You know," she said, tilting her head slightly, "I always find these kinds of questions fascinating." There was something deliberate about her tone. She wasn't just answering, she was shifting the narrative. The host parted his lips slightly, perhaps to interject, but she wasn't done. "I mean, I could sit here and list all the reasons. I love and respect my husband, the values we share, the way he has supported me, the life we've built together." She paused, letting the words settle before offering a small, knowing smile. "But somehow I don't think that's the answer." "You're really looking for, is it?" The host's expression flickered. Just for a second. but the camera caught it. That subtle shift in his demeanor signaled that he had walked into this moment expecting to control the conversation, yet somehow he was no longer in charge. The audience could sense it. He shifted in his chair, searching for footing. "Well, I was just curious," he began, but Usha cut in smoothly, her expression unwavering. "Were you?" she asked. "Because forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever heard a male politician's wife ask this question on live television." A murmur rippled through the audience. Heads turned, eyebrows raised. The host blinked, caught, off guard. But Usha didn't let him finish. "It's interesting, isn't it?" she continued, her tone light, almost conversational. "Women in politics, whether we're the ones in office or married to the men who are so often asked if we regret the choices we've made. But I can't recall ever seeing a male guest sit here and be asked if he regrets standing by his wife." Now, the audience was fully engaged, watching the dynamic shift before their eyes. The host forced a tight smile, trying to regain his footing. "Well, I just thought, given some of his positions," he started, but Usha tilted her head slightly, her voice calm yet piercing. "Ah, so that's what this is about." And just like that, she had turned the tables. The host realized, too late, that he had lost control of the moment. He cleared his throat, shuffling the papers in front of him, but the balance had already tipped. For the first time, he was the one on the defensive. Usha, on the other hand, looked completely at ease. No notes, no teleprompter, just confidence and a firm grasp of the moment. She leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with the host. "Let me ask you something," she said, her voice calm but precise. "Would you ever ask Michelle Obama if she regrets marrying Barack?" A brief silence followed. The host's mouth opened, but no words came out. The audience reacted instantly. Quiet chuckles, murmurs of recognition. They knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just answering. She was exposing the bias within the question itself. The host finally found his voice, though it lacked the authority he had started with. "Well, that's not really the same, isn't it?" Usha interjected smoothly, raising an eyebrow. "Because when a woman stands by a man whose views don't align perfectly with the mainstream media's agenda, suddenly it's a questionable decision. But when it's the other way around, it's a love story. Interesting." The audience was fully engaged now, watching as the host struggled to regain control. He forced a chuckle, attempting to brush it off. "I was just giving you the opportunity to speak for yourself, that's all." Usha didn't blink. "And I appreciate that," she replied, her voice carrying no sarcasm, only an unsettling directness. "But I also recognize when I'm being handed a loaded question." More murmurs rippled through the crowd. The host's smirk had vanished, and Usha wasn't finished. She shifted slightly in her seat, making it clear. She was in control now. She remained completely at ease while he struggled to regain his footing. "I don't regret marrying my husband," she said, her voice steady. "I'm proud of the life we've built. I'm proud of his work, just like he's proud of mine. And if the question is whether I stand by him despite political disagreements, then let me turn that back on you." She let the pause linger just long enough. "Do you stand by every political stance your spouse has ever taken?" The host inhaled sharply, a subtle shift in his expression that didn't go unnoticed. That's different," he said quickly. Usha tilted her head slightly. "How so?" Silence. The audience watched, waiting for an answer that never came. Her smile was measured, her tone unwavering. "Because if we're holding marriages to that standard, we'd have to question a lot of people. But we don't. We only do it when it serves a certain narrative." The host glanced toward his producers, searching for a way to regain control, but it was too late. The moment belonged to her, and the audience knew it. Then, just when he thought he could recover, it got worse. He let out a short breath, forcing a chuckle. Well, I wasn't trying to imply— Oh, I know exactly what you were trying to do, Usha cut in smoothly, her voice still composed but sharp enough to make him shift in his chair. It just didn't work. The audience erupted. Laughter, scattered applause, even a few whistles. The host, who had begun the interview in full control, was now struggling to regain his footing. He glanced down at his notes, flipping through them as if searching for a new angle. But it didn't matter anymore. The moment had already slipped through his fingers. Usha leaned back, waiting, making it clear she wasn't going to make this easy for him. Finally, he looked up, forcing another smile. I just think that when someone's spouse has strong political views, people are naturally curious about how that affects the marriage. Usha nodded slowly. Oh, absolutely. Just like people were curious about Bill and Hillary Clinton's marriage when they disagreed on certain policies, or when John Kerry's wife spoke out against his campaign positions. Oh, wait. She let her voice trail off, pretending to think. Nobody actually asked them those questions, did they? More laughter rippled through the audience as the host's smile grew tighter. Look, he said, his voice betraying his frustration. I was just asking a question. And I answered it, Usha replied smoothly. The problem is, you didn't get the answer you were hoping for. A collective ooh spread through the crowd, and even a camera operator could be seen suppressing a grin. The energy in the studio had shifted entirely. The host knew it. He could try to move on, but it wouldn't matter. The damage was done, and the audience could feel it. This was the kind of moment that would be replayed, shared across social media, dissected on news panels, and turned into headlines by morning. And that's exactly what happened. By the time the full interview aired, clips of Usha's response had already taken over the internet. Twitter was flooded with reactions, some cheering her for dismantling the host's narrative, others scrambling to spin the moment in his favor. Memes surfaced, and screenshots of the host's stunned expression spread across political commentary. Pages. Even media analysts who typically disagreed with Usha's political stance admitted she had handled the moment with sharpness and grace. Sensing the impact, the network quickly clipped the exchange and uploaded it to their YouTube channel, carefully editing the framing to present it as a fiery debate rather than a clear takedown. But it didn't matter. The raw footage had already circulated, and the consensus was overwhelming. Usha Vance had just delivered one of the most devastatingly effective responses in recent political media history. As for the host, his name was trending too, but not for the reasons he had hoped. The ripple effect didn't stop there. The fallout was immediate, with news outlets scrambling to respond, each spinning the moment in their own way. Conservative media hailed Usha's takedown as a masterclass in grace under pressure, calling it an exposure of the media's double standards. Liberal commentators, on the other hand, tried to downplay the exchange, some claiming it was taken out of context, while others argued that the host's question had been misinterpreted. But the debate only fueled more discussion, cementing the moment as one that would be dissected, debated, and remembered far beyond a single news cycle. Some claimed the host's question had been misinterpreted, or that Usha had deflected instead of answering directly, but none of that mattered. The video was everywhere. Clips of her response flooded Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and even TikTok. Someone set her most biting remarks to dramatic music, editing in slow-motion shots of the host blinking in stunned silence. Within 24 hours, the clip had racked up millions of views. Political figures couldn't resist weighing in. Some Democrats avoided the topic entirely, unwilling to touch what had become a PR disaster for the host, while others attempted damage control, dismissing the backlash as manufactured outrage. Meanwhile, Republicans wasted no time turning the moment into a rallying cry, with prominent senators, commentators, and influencers praising Usha's response as the perfect rebuttal to media bias. But the most telling reaction came from ordinary viewers. Comment sections on news sites and social media platforms were flooded with people who weren't necessarily political, but had experienced the same kind of bias firsthand. Women, especially, connected with Usha's point. This isn't about politics. I've had people question my choices just because I don't fit their expectations. Good for her for standing her ground. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't get defensive. She just completely dismantled the guy. That's how it's done. I don't care what side you're on. Asking a woman if she regrets her marriage because her husband has his own opinions is just condescending. And then came the think pieces. Journalists and opinion writers rushed to analyze why this moment had struck such a nerve, cementing it as more than just a viral clip, but a cultural flashpoint. The clip struck a chord for different reasons. Some saw it as a statement on marital loyalty in a politically divided era, while others viewed it as a larger commentary on how women are treated in the media. A few tried to argue that Usha had used her legal training to manipulate the conversation, but that argument quickly lost steam because the truth was undeniable. She had been handed a loaded question and had handled it flawlessly. Meanwhile, the network and the host's employer found themselves in an awkward position. What was meant to be a routine discussion with a political spouse had exploded into a viral moment they could no longer control. In a half-hearted attempt at damage control, the host released a statement insisting his question had been fair and misunderstood, but no one was buying it. Usha hadn't just survived the interview, she had completely flipped the script, and the conversation wasn't fading anytime soon. But beyond the headlines and social media reactions, there was a deeper lesson in all of this, one that transcended politics. As the media storm raged on, Usha Vance remained exactly as she had been in that interview, calm, unbothered, and resolute. She didn't chase the headlines. She didn't gloat. She didn't engage in online debates. She had said what she needed to say, and that was enough. Yet the impact of that moment went beyond a viral clip. It touched something more human than politics. People saw themselves in that exchange, especially women. It wasn't just about Usha and the host. It was about how women are constantly put in positions where they must justify their choices. A woman builds a successful career, and she's asked if she regrets sacrificing family time. A woman chooses to stay home and raise her kids, and she's asked if she regrets not pursuing a career. No matter the choice, the question is always there. And in that moment, Usha Vance didn't just answer it. She challenged why it was even being asked in the first place. A woman chooses family over a career, and she's asked if she regrets it. A woman marries a man with strong opinions, and suddenly, her marriage is scrutinized. The double standard was impossible to ignore, and Usha hadn't just answered the question. She had exposed it for what it really was. That was the real reason the clip spread so fast, not because it was scandalous or politically charged, but because it was a rare moment of clarity. Sometimes the most powerful response isn't shouting or arguing, it's simply refusing to play the game. Usha took control of the conversation not by attacking, but by making people think, a skill far more powerful than any political talking point. In the end, the host's attempt to put her on the spot backfired spectacularly. But this was never about him. It was about how we treat people when we think they owe us an explanation for their choices. And maybe, just maybe, it was a wake-up call. Because if there's one lesson to take from this, it's that confidence isn't about having the loudest voice in the room. It's about knowing when to speak and when to let the truth speak for itself. Usha Vance didn't just win an interview. She shifted the conversation. And that's something no headline can take away.